McDonald with the Alliance Française de Chicago, and today I will be reading Part 2, Chapter 7 of Bonjour Tristesse by Françoise Sagan. A few days later, my father was contacted by a friend of ours suggesting that we meet up in San Rafael for an aperitif. He couldn't wait to tell us, as he was delighted at the thought of being able to escape briefly from the self-imposed and rather artificial isolation in which we were living. So I informed Elsa and Cyril that we would be at the Bar du Soleil at 7 o'clock and that if they wanted to come along, they would see us there. As ill luck would have it, Elsa knew the friend in question, which made her doubly eager to go. Foreseeing complications, I tried to put her off, but I was wasting my time. "Charles Webb adores me," she said with a childlike simplicity. "If he sees me, he's bound to urge Raymond to come back to me." Cyril didn't care whether he went to San Rafael or not. The main thing for him was to be where I was. I saw it in his expression, and I couldn't help feeling proud. So that afternoon, around 6 o'clock, we set off in Anne's car. I loved her car. It was an impressive American convertible, more in line with her professional image than her personal taste. It was certainly to my taste, being full of shiny fittings and very quiet and cut off from the outside world, and it tilted when we went round bends. What's more, all three of us sat in the front, and nowhere did I feel fonder of anyone than in a car. There we were, the three of us squashed up together, laying ourselves open to the same pleasures of speed and wind, and perhaps even to the same death. Anne drove as if to symbolize her place in the family that we were going to become. I had not been in her car since that evening in Cannes, and it made me think. We met Charles Webb and his wife at the Bar du Soleil. He specialized in theater advertising, and his wife specialized in spending the money he made, which she did at an incredible rate by lavishing it on young men. He was absolutely obsessed with the idea of making ends meet, and he pursued money relentlessly, hence he had an anxious, impatient side to him that was somewhat unseemly. He had been Elsa's lover over a long period because, for all her good looks, she was not a particularly grasping woman, and he liked the fact that she was quite relaxed where money was concerned. As for his wife, she was a nasty individual. Anne did not know her, and I saw her lovely face quickly take on that disdainful, mocking expression she usually assumed in company. Charles Webb talked a lot, as usual, all the while looking across at Anne in an inquisitive way. He was clearly wondering what she was doing with that womanizer Raymond and his daughter. I felt full of pride at the thought that he was soon going to find out. My father leaned over to him as he was drawing breath and, out of the blue, said, "I've news for you, old chap. Anne and I are getting married on the 5th of October. Webb looked from one to the other, quite dumbstruck. I was delighted. His wife, who had always had a soft spot for my father, seemed disconcerted. Webb then bellowed, "My compliments! What a splendid idea! My dear lady, you are amazing for taking on such a rascal. Waiter, this calls for a celebration." Anne was smiling, and she was calm and relaxed. Just at that moment, I saw Webb's face light up, and I did not turn round to look. "Elsa! My God, it's Elsa Mackenberg! She hasn't seen me. Have you seen how lovely that girl is looking nowadays, Raymond?" "Isn't she just?" said my father complacently, as if she belonged to him. Then he remembered, and his expression changed. Anne couldn't fail to notice my father's tone of voice. In one rapid movement, she turned from looking at him to looking at me. As she opened her mouth to say, no doubt the first thing that came into her head, I leaned across and spoke to her. "Anne, your elegance is causing quite a stir. There's a man over there who can't take his eyes off you." I had dropped my voice to a confidential pitch, but was speaking loud enough for my father to hear. He spun round and caught sight of the man in question. "I dislike that kind of thing," he said, taking Anne's hand. "Aren't they sweet?" exclaimed Madame Webb mockingly. "Charles, you shouldn't have bothered these two lovebirds. You could have just invited young Cecile here." "Young Cecile here wouldn't have come," I said bluntly. "Why not? Have you boyfriends among the fishermen?" She had once seen me sitting on a bench talking to a bus conductor, and ever since has treated me as if I lost caste. That's what she called it, losing caste. "Yes, I have," I said, trying to sound cheery. "And do you fish often?" The worst of it was that she thought she was being funny. I was getting more and more annoyed, and I said, "I don't know much about what old trouts do, but I myself do fish." There was silence. Then Anne spoke up, composed as always. Raymond, would you ask the waiter to bring a straw? You really do need one with this freshly squeezed orange juice. Charles Webb quickly moved on to the topic of refreshing drinks. My father had to suppress his laughter. I could see it by the way in which he became engrossed in his glass. Anne shot me an imploring look. On the spot, it was decided that we would all have dinner together, which is what happens when people have narrowly avoided falling out. I drank a lot during the meal. I needed to blot out the anxious expression Anne wore whenever she looked at my father, or what could have been gratitude whenever her eyes rested on me. Whenever Webb's wife made a dig at me, I looked back at her with a beaming smile. She found this tactic of mine disconcerting, and she very quickly became aggressive. Anne signaled to me not to react. She had a horror of scenes, and she sensed that Madame Webb was all set to create one. For my part, I was used to scenes. They were common occurrences in the circles in which we moved. So I wasn't at all on edge as I listened to her. After dinner, we went to a nightclub in San Rafael. Shortly after we got there, Elsa and Cyril arrived. Elsa stopped in the entrance, spoke very loudly to the lady in charge of the cloakroom, and, with Cyril in tow, carried on in. It struck me that she was behaving more like a tart than a girlfriend, but she had the looks to carry it off. "Who is that whippersnapper?" asked Charles Webb. "He looks very young." "It's Love," I whispered to his wife. "Love suits him." "What an idea," my father said angrily. "It's an infatuation. That's what it is." I glanced at Anne. She was studying Elsa in a calm, detached way, the way that she would look at the fashion models who presented her collections, or at very young women. She showed no trace of acrimony. For a moment, I admired her intensely for her lack of pettiness or jealousy. In any case, I couldn't understand what she might have to be jealous of about as far as Elsa was concerned. She was 100 times more beautiful and more subtle than Elsa. Being drunk, I told her so. She looked at me curiously. "Do you really think I'm more beautiful than Elsa?" "There's absolutely no doubt about it." "That's always nice to hear. But you're drinking too much yet again. Give me your glass. You're not too upset at seeing Cyril over there, are you? Anyway, he's clearly not enjoying himself." "He's my lover," I said brightly. "You are thoroughly drunk. It's just as well that it's time to go home." When, with relief, we left the Webbs, I made a point of addressing Madame Webb politely. My father took the wheel, and my head lolled over onto Anne's shoulder. I kept thinking how much I preferred her to the Webbs and to all the people we usually saw. She was much better than them, more dignified and intelligent. My father didn't say much. No doubt in his mind's eye he was going over the arrival of Elsa. "Is she asleep?" he asked Anne. "She's sleeping like a baby. She behaved herself quite well, relatively speaking, except for the reference to old trout, which was a bit direct." My father began to laugh. There was silence. Then I heard his voice again. "Anne, I love you. I love only you. Do you believe me?" "Don't keep saying that. It frightens me." "Give me your hand." I almost sat up in protest. "No, not while you're driving along a cliff top." But I was rather drunk, and there was Anne's perfume, and the wind from the sea blowing in my hair, and the little scratch that Cyril had made on my shoulder when we were making love. So many reasons to be happy and to say nothing. I was falling asleep. Meanwhile, Elsa and poor Cyril must have been setting off laboriously on the motorcycle his mother had given him for his last birthday. I don't know why, but the thought of it moved me to tears. This car was so smooth, it had such good suspension, it was just made for sleep. Madame Webb was unlikely to be getting much sleep at that moment. Probably at her age I'd also be paying young men to love me, because love is the sweetest thing. It's what in life is most vivid and has the most point. So the price paid hardly matters. What mattered was not becoming embittered and jealous as she was of Elsa and Anne. I began to laugh softly to myself. Anne's shoulder sank down a little lower for me. "Go to sleep," she said firmly. I went to sleep. That's all for now. Thank you.